Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice, the 100 episode special. Boys, we made it here. We got Jack Butcher, Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi. Boys, how you feeling straight off the bat? We made it here. What's going on?
It's 100 is crazy, man. 100 is just...
Three-digit club.
Up. We need that Jack, the famous Jack tweet that I'm going to jack. I'm going to jack it.
By the way, everybody is attributing this to me and has been for ages, but it's not my quote. This is something that Chris Williamson told me. If I'm you're
talking about the 100 episode thing.
21 episodes. Is that the one you're going to pull up, Trung?
Okay, no, well, yeah, it's a Chris Williamson tweet, the one with the Reddit article. Well, let's tell the listeners and viewers what it was. So, Jack, what is it?
So, I went on a podcast, I don't know, 2 years ago now, Chris Williamson. It's called Modern Wisdom. If you're listening to this, good chance you've heard of it.
Yeah, he's
smashing
killing
it. Yeah. And he...
Love Island's finest, by the way.
First
season.
OG right, Love Island. He, I think he was quoting someone when he told me that to be in the top 1% of podcasts, you've just got to record 21 episodes. So 99% of every published podcast in the history of humanity has never made it to 21 episodes. So I'm sure, boys, we're in fraction of a percent here on volume alone right now.
There we go.
Congratulations.
And I think, Trung, a few weeks ago, or maybe like a month ago, we had shared on the pod that graph of the drop-off after the pandemic, of how many people started podcasts and then they just got back to normal life, which is kind of understandable. But
totally understandable.
Yeah. But anyway, so today we're mostly gonna be talking about how the 100 episodes have gone, kind of like reflect on it a little bit, get a little philosophical, chat a little bit about that, and then we'll see how we are for time. We might cover some stuff that's been happening in the last week, but let's just see how it goes. So, boys, there's only really one place to start. We're gonna go through what has worked as planned, what was unexpected, advice for others, predictions for the podcast world, and would we do it again? So let's just start with what worked as planned. I mean, what do you guys reckon, man? I guess another way of saying this is going into it, what you expected, what was actually
well, let's talk about the genesis, right? Let's take a trip down memory lane. Like, Bilal, you and I were texting, right? Like, so all three of us had become like Twitter buddies. Just, this is the power of Twitter, by the way. Them DMs on Twitter, wild things can happen, right? And like today, I still haven't met Jack in person. I've met Bilal in person.
Crazy, right?
And Bilal and Jack have met.
And we've never met all three of us, obviously, either, for that reason.
But we're all from the Commonwealth. Like, you can hear that these are just three Commonwealth guys doing Commonwealth things, right? And so just memory lane, I think
Commonwealth things. That sounds like I want to pick your brain on what that means.
It's a nice oxymoron. It's a nice oxymoron, Commonwealth. I don't think it was designed that way, but it's a great.
I don't think the wealth was very common. So
that's true. That's true.
Actually, you're right. I don't know if we want to be doing Commonwealth things.
All right. Yeah.
All right. The positive,
pillaging.
Yeah,
we're not doing
positive stuff from the Commonwealth. All right. Like a shared understanding. Okay.
Cricket. Let's just stick to cricket.
We'll talk about cricket and like maple syrup and weird breakfasts.
Universal health care.
Yeah. Universal.
There we go. All right.
So all Twitter buddies. I don't even think we fully broke this down before. I know people have asked in the past, like, how do we chat? So Bilal and Jack had done multiple episodes of Creator Lab. Is this right?
Yeah, I think we did two. One, the OG, and then a second one we did live on Zoom. We had like, I think almost 1,000 people, 500 or 1,000 people listening live. Man. So it's kind of cool. First time I did that as well.
2019, 2020, I think. Me and Bilal met from the Trends Hustle group. And I was able to smuggle some of his podcasts into the Hustle newsletter, 1.5 million readers. Yeah. Actually, you did with Tim Urban, right?
Yeah. We did a kind of little collab on that because the last part of the show, I basically asked him questions you had given me.
Yeah.
And did a kind of exclusive for the Hustle.
He has a new book coming out, by the way, Tim Urban.
I know, yeah.
The book he's working on. We should probably get him on the pod, actually.
I was asking him already, so we'll see. He said the next month is a bit busy, so we'll see if we can get him on. Yeah.
He's probably
What's his book called? Do you know?
I've forgotten what it's called, but it looks kind of cool.
He should do that cover. You know, the guy standing on just before the exponential curve. I think that's a great way to market the book.
Oh, no. What's Our Problem? A self-help book for societies.
Yeah, there we go.
It looks really good, by the way.
Yeah.
So the little background. So that's how I knew Bilal. And then I knew Jack from we're literally swapping memes. Like this is not even a joke. Like we were
the most
swapping
organic thing. Yeah, exactly.
just like the most old. I remember actually Jack had this incredible meme of guys stealing. You know the guy holding the girl's hand, that one, and then look at another girl.
Yeah.
So the way he had it was a guy holding a girl's hand. So that's his original partner, was like a long form article. And then the other girl was a tweet thread. And it's just like
that one hit for Trung.
It's like no one there's on Twitter, like freaking taking a long form thread and just making it, a long form article making a thread. So that's how we all met. And we just like Bilal said, we were like these people at the start of the pandemic. It's like, yeah, let's just start a podcast. Like the 500,000 people that started, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's I guess that's
the genesis. Yeah. We basically, the summary from my side was we said let's just trial it. We'll do it as an episode of Creator Lab first, and then once we recorded it, we were like, actually let's just do a fresh feed. Let's see if people like it. If they like it, we'll just keep doing it, and that's kind of how it started. So anyway, that is the genesis. But yeah, I guess taking us, it's almost 2 years again for like people. I think April 15th was episode 0. So we're hitting 100 episodes. And so yeah, I guess like going into it, I'd done a podcast before. You guys had been on podcasts before, and I know Trung, you had done a couple of interviews at least.
I actually did a podcast before that nobody knows about. I did a movie podcast. I did
get the archives up.
I have an archive. I have 5 movies done. I did The Fugitive. I did The Fugitive, Die Hard. They're incredible episodes, by the way, but very cancelable. Like I'd have to really edit out the parts. But like
Patreon only for that one.
I did it in 2015.
Only fans.
Yeah, only fans. Well, I actually will tell you something based on what Jack said about the Chris Williamson quote about if you make 21 episodes, you're already in the top 1%. I didn't even get past 5 episodes. I did with my friend Eric Ashoni. And I'll tell you what, though, I made a huge mistake. And this goes back to Jack's This Is Pointless chart, because I did that in 2015. If I just kept doing it, it would be I guarantee you it'd be a monster podcast right now. And I know because freaking Bill Simmons and The Ringer, they did something called the Rewatchables. And their catalog is just one movie an episode, and it's massive. And they came out like 5 years later. So that idea, like, I mean, listen, I'm not Bill Simmons, but like that idea, if you had just built that back catalog, would have been massive. So I think this goes back to the point.
It's pretty evergreen too. I like that trend.
The discoverability of that is crazy. It's cool.
Exactly, right? Well, but here's the question, Jack. Did you ever start a podcast before this one? Because everyone does.
Yeah. I had
you did the office hours for...
I had like a little monologue podcast. I think I got 5 episodes of it. They're like 4 minutes long each. Visualize Value podcast.
Oh shit! I mean, you know that if you dropped it now, the swarm would be all over that.
Yeah, I did it like as basically a forcing function. Like you could listen to them. I was like, it's just me talking through it, like pressing record and be like, I'm just doing this so I can basically get on record that I'm starting to do this. I have no plan. No script, no nothing, but I'm going to see if I can start this habit. And yeah, I got, I think, to 5 episodes. The monologue thing is just fucking hard. Like you have to put a lot of effort to make that good.
And then Jack, you also kind of did the office hours thing. I think it was called Visualize Value Office Hours, which wasn't technically a podcast, but it was kind of similar. You had a guest on, you'd be talking about their story and like what people can learn from it. So
yeah, like I had to really force myself to do that. Like they were really valuable and I enjoyed them, but it was like a massive energy drain for me. Like 100%. Preparing an hour or 90 minutes of questions. Some people, Bilal and you, Trung, like you guys are like think that way and operate that way, but for me it's like very all-consuming to try and make that a good experience for people listening. And thank you to everybody who came on and did it. I think we made great stuff, but it was like, fucking hell, this is not sustainable for me. I think I did 60 of them. I was like, I feel like I've done everything. Like I feel like we've kind of covered the principles of digital business building now, and like my curiosity is not like making me chase this down as hard as I initially did. So yeah, all that stuff's still up, and I think there's great stuff in there. Like that stuff I think will be relevant for a good amount of time. But until getting to this format where it's like feels like you just show up and shoot the shit, that's like, it wasn't really a sustainable thing for me until then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great
Actually,
way to
Bilal,
put
let
it.
me ask you, because
Yeah,
I think Bilal, if Jack had the 60 episodes of The Office Hours, but he said he got burnt out from that. And then I gave up after 5 on my thing ages ago. So you, up to that point, you had the best editing, production know-how, and like you of the 3 of us, you were like, I'm going to take, I'll take the wheel here, just show up, guys, and we'll try to make it happen. Like, so let's ask you, like, specifically, what was your expectation of it? And then how did you see it play out?
Yeah, it's a good, I guess one of the things I might be jumping ahead here, but one of the things that was very different for me here was when you're doing it yourself versus doing it with 2 other people, obviously, it's very, very different, obviously. And just like decision making, things you prioritize. And like, so if I was doing this all from scratch myself, there'll be some things I would do maybe slightly differently from day one. But working with you 2, I was like, oh, okay. The phrase of like good enough was kind of like prominent for me throughout the early phases, right? Especially as it relates to just like the technical shit, right? Like the microphone, making sure the sound is good, or the format. I was like, it doesn't need to be 10 out of 10. It needs to be like an 8, 9 out of 10, and it's completely fine.
Or in my case, 3 out of 10 for about a year.
Yeah. And for me, like the other part is like I've done, like in the real work world, I've managed people and like done stuff like that. But it's very different when you're in a partnership with people. I haven't really done that in this way. So that was another kind of adjustment where I'm like, oh, we're all kind of equal partners. We all have to take each other's opinions and share our ideas, and like we basically come to decisions through consensus. And like the like super advanced way we do this is basically a WhatsApp group, right? Like we don't have like weekly meetings. We don't do like a post-mortem, like how did it go? We just kind of like keep it very organic. So that's again something that I would normally do things differently in that way. But for me, it's always just been like, why do we do this in the first place? We do it because we enjoy doing it. And why are we going to keep doing it for a long time is if it remains fun for all 3 of us. And it is easy. So like obviously getting editor from day one, making sure that we could just like outsource the stuff that none of us would like to do, and focus on like making good stuff was like really key doing that early on. So I think one of the things that was kind of unexpected was like kind of how easy it would feel though, because I feel like even 100 episodes in, I just feel like we can turn up. We have stuff to talk about. We're already consuming stuff that we're interested in. And now it's just like, it feels like hanging out with friends, because it is, right? So that's really cool to see 2 years later it's still at that level. I still have as much fun now as I did like right in the beginning. And obviously like right in the beginning, there's this extra energy of like the unknown, what's it going to be like, and like trying out new things. And we've got more in the flow right now. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. What about you guys?
Butcher hit it.
Similar, yeah. I think it's weird when we started it out, you don't really, I mean, Bilal, you obviously had the most experience of continually showing up to do something like this. So it hasn't felt like it's taken as much energy as you would imagine it would take to produce something like this once a week. And that obviously a lot of props to Bilal's production flow on that front, because if that wasn't in place, this shit would have lasted about 2 weeks.
And I'll be honest, even for me, that was a big upgrade, because like with Creator Lab, it started with me doing them pretty much all in person, and then only audio, and then eventually I got to video. And that video production was like way more involved. It's like 2 cameras in person, massive like 60 gigabyte files. I'm sending it to my editor in America, and she's like downloading it. It's taking ages. And so it was just like moving from that to Zoom was actually kind of a nice adjustment, where it's just a lot less to do. I would say that even now to Creator Lab, it means I'm able to do Creator Lab at a higher velocity than I was previously. So that's been actually kind of a nice offshoot of this.
Here's a question for you boys. If we 10x or 100x the production budget on this podcast, how do you think that would affect the reception of it? I was always fascinated by that, because we're definitely like rough and ready on the production front, right? Like I think the indexing of the content is great. The Zoom recording is great, but it's like, look at like a Flagrant, for example. Yeah. Like the production quality on that and the resources that go into producing that. I'm always fascinated by like how much of a difference that actually makes. Like if Flagrant was done on a Zoom call, would it be less entertaining or not? I don't know. I'm just curious.
My personal opinion on it is it would make a massive difference on video. It would, and honestly, part of that is doing it in person, right? Because like
the chemistry is different.
Yeah, and like even for a Zoom, this is incredible that we can actually have like authentic laughs and like but there's a tiny lag that you don't get in person, and like I think, especially for comedy, was what they do.
It's true,
like that is so key for real comedy, and so I think that makes a difference. And then the second part is video. Like I think if you were actually 10x in the budget, I don't think the audio would change too much. Like we all have microphones, and like that's pretty much all you really need for decent audio. Like you can soundproof a room, but that's not that big a deal. The real upgrade would be video and like having different angles, and then more importantly, investing in kind of editing that makes the video interesting.
Yeah.
And like also specifically for what Flagrant does amazingly well, and Andrew Schultz as a whole, is just the short form videos they make. Like they're making a 1 minute clip. It takes them like 12 hours sometimes.
Yeah,
like,
and
that's
the intro is killer, right?
Incredible,
They'll cut the. I mean,
exactly.
All YouTube killers are.
I think it's a huge difference. Like to answer Jack, I think I'll be very honest. Like if we were able to sit in a room and get proper video, God. I think this thing would absolutely explode. Like next level.
Yeah, I agree.
But listen, Jack's got 2 kids, guys. I got a kid. And like this is we're not saying that door is closed, but yeah, to answer your question, I think it would be absolutely just ginormous, which is amazing credit to those guys. Is like, and anybody that's able to pull it off this is the benefit. I mean, you talk about network effects. I mean, look at some of the guys that live in LA, right? Like the people, obviously, whatever you think about Logan Paul, but like they do that
physical
too.
Network effects.
Yeah, the physical, point. Just like if you're living in LA, you can. Well, I mean, Bilal does live in New York, right? This is why I guess when you start Creative Lab, you're able to get really good guests and like be in studio. Like, I've seen Bilal's in-person stuff. People, you need to watch this stuff. Like it's like he looks like fucking Howard Stern. Like
Well, like, there was one where I had all those Stern. People. There we go. I'll take it. No, but you're right. And honestly, like to do an interview in person is so much more fun than doing it like on Zoom. But like doing this in person would be like really fun, but I think we already get the fun. Like it's still like an 8 out of 10 fun for me, whereas in person it'll be like 10. You get crazy guests. I mean, I would love to consider it if we could ever do it, obviously. But obviously we've got families and stuff like that. Yeah.
Let's keep it actionable for the listeners and the viewers, right? Like I'm sure people still actually want to start. Like whatever we said about the drop off, I'm sure there are people listening like, oh, should I do a podcast? This is like, we've said this before and we'll just have to say it again ad nauseum. You just have to know that you can do it every week or whatever cadence you're doing. Because once you start adding these bells and whistles, I mean, even 3 people coordinating is a pain in the ass, right?
Yeah, like, just time it. Like the timing is true. Just,
like we're pretty good actually. I'll say is like once a month, one of us will have something. Like it was my fault this week that we couldn't do the Twitter Spaces. And it's not
we'll get the story of that later in life, but we'll save that one. Yeah,
that's gonna be a good one. But everybody, probably once a month, it'll be like, hey guys, somebody will just be like, yo, sorry, can't do our normal recording time Tuesday at 9:30. Can you guys do Monday, Wednesday? And I think we'll go back so we have a little bit of flow here. Like the initial question is like, what worked? I knew that I could commit to a schedule. Like if we said once a week, which is what we said, it's like, I can do that. And we've done that. We've all done that. So the only thing I'll say for sure is I went in knowing that if we set a schedule, we just commit to it, I could pull that off. And so I'll say that worked. I didn't really have any expectations otherwise, to be fully honest.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I would say there's a couple things there. Is like we're all lucky now that we generally all have our own schedule mostly. Like we obviously you have kids and like you have to drop your kids to school. That's something stuck in the calendar. But we've been able to be kind of like, flexible there as needed. And then I will say like we've been in so many time zones, man. Like you're on the West Coast time zone, Jack's in Nashville, I'm in New York. There's been times I'm in, South America at one point, and then we're in London, like that sort of stuff is actually kind of hard. Like London to the West Coast is like one of us is either doing it at night or you're doing it super early or something like that. So I think that is an interesting one, but it comes back to that lesson. Like you said, it's like making it easy for yourself. Like I remember listening to Tim Ferriss one when he talked about like if he was doing it again, a recommendation from people. I kind of agree with that. Like commit to a certain cadence, make it super easy for yourself, and then for us, making sure it's still fun, because that is like the thing that brings it all together. Like, it's not just enough having a schedule. Like, if you're not looking forward to every week, you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to turn up on time. You're just going to be like, oh, I'm going to skip it this week. You're going to like make an excuse and say, actually, we'll just leave it. So I think that is really key as well. So yeah, anything else on what was unexpected? I guess that's I know, Trung, you just said not much else. Jack, what about you? Anything that was unexpected doing it this much?
Maybe how broad it got, like how much stuff we managed to, like, just being able to do it every week, I think is cool. Like, there's been a few weeks where like, shit, what are we going to talk about? And then we have the option to just do the casual chat or ask a question in the Telegram or whatever. But I think it's been interesting to see how we always find a way to tie in what's happening to like the type of conversations we've been having, or like the context keeps building and the themes that we discuss have like all woven together quite I mean, it's kind of similar to if you would meet up in person and talk about things over an extended period of time, right? You get like there's points of reference, inside jokes, all this stuff, and you can't foresee that when you get started, like especially listening to podcasts that have different guests every week, which is like the interviewer in that case probably gets more talented, more skillful at asking questions, but you reset the context on a lot of other things, and I didn't really forecast out what that would turn into, but it's just a completely different. Again, podcast is like people like start with the term instead of the reason for doing the thing. Like, I think the conversations that we've been having for the last year, 2 years are like interesting to me because there's 3 unique takes on the same thing. And starting a podcast, if it's going to be, you know, interviewing this person that's been interviewed 20 times and comes and does the script, that's like that's like a completely different exercise to what we're doing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just completely different. So I think we've also been, the traction has been easy to keep up because it's a different thing, and we're not, you know, there's no emulation happening. There's no like, let's try and get this person. It's all been very, very organic.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great way to put it. Trung, anything else before we move on to the next one?
Unexpected is the difference. So something I did stand out, I'm just kind of piggybacking what Jack said, is episodes with or without a guest. I didn't fully realize how different that is, and also like our motivation for doing those, right? Like I love to kind of just chew on this for a bit, because we know that, and we've had some really good guests over the past 2 years. We shouted out a bunch of them at our year wrap last year, but a good guest obviously can help build your audience. This is not new to anyone, but at the same time, some of our favorite episodes are the episodes where people reach out to us. They're like, and then we often do get a lot of comments. It's like, you know, sometimes we prefer just listening to you 3 guys. So I found that very interesting. Literally didn't even think about it because it was just like not even on my radar of something to think about when we entered this. But yeah, I mean, we chat about this internally a lot, right? Like, and of the 3 of us, I'm probably the most aggressive on getting, or like wanting to have guests, or like people will reach out to me. He's like, yo, I'd love to be on NIA. And like, and then we just have to balance. Like when Bilal's talking about the consensus and the negotiation about having a guest or not, I didn't realize, I think like that is probably the thing where we talk about, or because the schedule's set, right? And then like every Monday we kind of show up or the day before the recording and have an itinerary. But I'd say the point where we probably have the most discussion is like, oh, this person might potentially come. What's the interest? And what do you guys think? And I think both, I mean, I often hear this just from, tell me if I'm wrong here, but the consensus seems to be is like, guys, it's not like if the guest becomes like hard to book, I often hear from you guys is like, guys, like they'll be like Trung, not necessary. Like 3 of us is like baseline. That's better in a lot of cases. Like don't sweat it if we can't do this. I love you guys' thoughts.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, I'll just add. Oh, go on, Jack. You had something. Go on.
I was just gonna say, Celia listens to every episode of NIA, and she's like,
10
times preference is no guest. It's just the chemistry, boys. You got to warm up, and that's not to say that every guest we have had on hasn't been sensational. It's just a completely different format, you know? It's like a different vibe, different format. And that stuff is, I think we can do a different version of that because there's 3 of us too. And I think there's not been that many successful versions of that where you have more than one person hosting a guest. So I think that's, or at least in this world, maybe that's more common elsewhere. Like traditional media, that happens a lot, right? You have like multiple people having somebody come and appear on their platform. But it's just different. It's different. And especially I think the guests that are into the show and listen to the show, they like slot right in, as opposed to like somebody that's incredibly interesting that comes on and provides something great content wise, but is more of an interruption to the cadence of the vibe.
Yeah. Like one certain Bitcoin proponent.
So that's a great example of like our most popular episode is like our least
we didn't say anything
true to our form episode. Yeah. So popular for a different reason.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one because even I would say obviously Michael Saylor's one, if you look at our stats, it was the most popular, on paper, but majority of that honestly is because it got caught by the YouTube algorithm. It was like the one episode that kind of popped, and Michael Saylor's.
Because guys wake up and
people would say
search Michael Saylor.
That's true, and he's obviously a big name, big guest. I would actually say from speaking to people, I'd actually say a lot of our audience at that time were less like Bitcoin Maxi than the people searching for Michael Saylor, obviously, right? And so there was almost like a lot of people who listened to our stuff didn't even love that episode. So that's why I would say that. Like to say the best episode, I think is I'm putting air quotes here because
most popular.
Not even most popular. That's the wrong. Pure numbers.
Just numbers.
What got the most
views?
Most
listened to.
Yeah.
Most listened to. Yeah. And I would say, I'd actually say Tetranodes was actually probably the most listened to of new people. Most. Yeah, in terms of new people, and that was interesting because I feel like that's a bit more of a Web3 NFT world, picked it up a bit more, and like the crypto world. And so to me the way I'd measure it is like what were my favorite episodes doing, and I would put 2 of those up there, but I think definitely us 3 jamming together were probably still my favorite ones. But there were a few banger guests that were just like memorable, right? And like Jack said, the ones that kind of understand the format, and maybe that's partly on us to kind of tee them up and say like this is the vibe of the show. I think a lot of them, if they've listened, they kind of get it, but it is quite difficult to have a chemistry. And I think us 3, when we started together, it just kind of worked, but obviously it's got way better after doing 100 of these. And so I think that's an interesting thing of thinking about like why we would bring a guest on. And Trung's, your point earlier, like definitely helps you build your audience or whatever, but genuinely we've never really talked about it like that. Like we've never said, oh, let's get this person because it's going to really help us grow our podcast. Like that's never been the motivation.
And we've done zero, like if we're being honest, we've done almost zero growth at all.
Yeah.
Like everything you're supposed to do to grow a podcast, like we've dabbled, right? We've done a couple of videos, like sure, but in totality, we've done nothing.
It's been very organic. Yeah.
Which I guess I was about to say it's a bit embarrassing, but actually it's not, because like we've all grown things in different platforms, and I actually don't feel like it's super necessary. Like initially it was, because I guess a year ago we're like, oh, we need to get advertisers, and obviously things are really cool now, like very difficult to lock it in, and it's just like, all right, well, who cares? Like I can show checks.art and I'll show Creator Lab, right? We joked about that last couple episodes.
But I think even that, Trung, though, you're right. Like, I know we kind of made a joke about the shield segment or whatever, but genuinely, like, all of us have kind of come back to that thing over and over again of like, why are we doing this? Oh, we're having fun. We enjoy doing it. Let's keep it going. Now, I will say at some point, we're going to say, oh, we're spending thousands of dollars on editing. We're, spending a few hours a week on this. Like, there's opportunity costs, right? And so I would be more than happy if this was a break-even project where we didn't spend our own money. That would be great. Like that would be, we'll get to the question later, but someone asked this question about what the next 100 should look like for us. So maybe we'll transition to that in a second. But On the guest, the last thing I was going to say, the model for this, where I've thought about it quite a bit, like you mentioned Flagrant before, it's probably my favorite podcast, right? Like a lot of the idea for the initial podcast came from thinking of a Flagrant, an all-in pod, even like Brilliant Idiots for me with Charlemagne and Andrew Schultz. It's about like topical stuff, but keep it fun. And no one was really doing it that well, apart from All In, obviously. But they're not like comedians, right? Like they're like 3, 4.
It gets pretty serious on that show.
It gets very serious, and they talk a lot of politics, which gets a bit boring to me. But I think it's still useful stuff. So to me, this has still been a very unique like lane that's naturally come about, and that's kind of actually to answer that question, unexpected. Like if you just think of the evolution of the content, like we started with Bored Apes, like that was episode 3 or 2. It was actually episode 0, Jack's first NFT.
Episode 0 was Jack's NFT,
Jack's
right?
NFT. And we didn't say, oh, we're going to talk about it. We just said, we're going to talk about stuff that's interesting. And it just happened to be, there was a wave of Web3 stuff. We all were very into it. That was a bit of a wave to ride. And then after that, it's been a bear market. We talked about bear market. And then we've kept it real. Like we didn't just do Web3, right? Even though it's quite tempting at one point because it's a huge growth curve.
We did, exactly.
We definitely considered it.
Listen, we definitely considered it, right?
Yeah.
But it goes back to the point, it's like, looking back, it's like, why? What was the reason for it? It was just a cash in, honestly.
But that's why it comes back to that same point. If we were doing it for purely numbers, purely revenue, that would be the right move. It's like hone in on a niche audience and like bang it out. And like that wasn't really, that would have felt way too much like work and like doing something.
It would have sucked. Like trying to do like a news report or something.
Yeah, I'm
like
so glad we didn't. Oh.
Yeah,
the whole thing I think maybe we've discussed this before, but like we can prepare for the episodes by basically scrolling back through the group chat from the week before. It's like,
well, that was how the Telegram started. We were just going to share it. I will say, actually, we should actually talk about that for the things we should do differently, basically. Like what the initial idea for Telegram was and the community and how that's kind of changed. So yeah, I don't want to cut you off. Go on, finish what you're saying.
No, that was near enough it. Just like the byproduct of stuff you're already sharing between each other versus like, hey, you have to go and research this week, or you have to go and find something interesting.
Yeah.
Versus like, here's this thing that I'm not even thinking about the podcast when I'm sending that to you guys. I'm just like, this is like
interesting,
funny or interesting or something.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, we should talk about that on the podcast. It's like a secondary thing as opposed to, I'm going to start, the best edge of the internet podcast in the world and go out looking for stuff that you don't give a shit about, that you can't like even make a compelling conversation around because you don't have an opinion. So that's another,
a great way to put it.
When people are asking for like advice on how to start, it's like you have to, for it to be sustainable, it has to just be an extension of something you already care about or something that you can add additional context to without it feeling like this mega hard lift. And I don't know, that's like such a cliche, that advice, but it's so, for something like this where you're just sitting in front of a microphone and talking about stuff, if you don't have like opinions already in your head about the thing, it's like,
it's gonna be very hard.
It's very, very hard to record for 60 minutes and say something interesting.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And then, sorry, this was actually a question in the Telegram from Faraz. Top tip for someone thinking of starting a podcast but not sure how to start. So I think we've already given like 4 or 5 there. Yeah. Anything else to add on that, boys, before
let me add to that, and I'll say one more thing about the unexpected. It was unexpected how much alpha Jack was putting in front of my face and that I didn't grab. Like,
yes, +1 to that.
Once a month or once a quarter.
Oh my God.
It just, money was being presented to me.
That's a great one. Unexpected.
And I literally in your face. And this again speaks to the motivation of the show. None of this is like, hey, I'm gonna get insider information on like the hottest. None of that's what it was, right? It's like
we didn't even know what NFTs were when we started. Really, it was pretty much a new idea, right?
But the amount of alpha that was going on and that was not capitalized on is remarkable.
That's a good one. I would add to that Jack, like the amount of times something has happened completely unexpected mostly from where Jack mentioned something, we're like, what the hell are you talking about? Or like sometimes Jack sends his DMs and me and Trung are like, what the hell is on your feed? Because it's an insane feed. I wanted to see that feed
Jack
for a day.
Sent a PDF of like the most unhinged geopolitical research report I'd ever seen. He's like, boys, this is what I get in my inbox.
That word out 99 in there.
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah,
it looked
I
like
had to beg to get on that list too. That's not something you could sign up for.
It's the Illuminati newsletter. There we go.
Man,
Yeah.
Wait, let's well, Jack, do you have any thoughts about us dropping the alpha? Do you laugh? Or like, I mean, obviously you don't care that much.
The other thing is like, I wasn't even presenting it that way either.
Yeah, you weren't saying,
I wasn't saying buy this thing or do this.
Yeah,
like saying, please don't. This is like, I know this is fucking idiotic. Like I was talking to Seal about this last night. I was like, how on earth, the Bored Ape thing specifically, it was like, what was going through my mind? Like to have sat through that for a year or something. Just like, I can't even put myself back in that position now. Cause I was like, that was crazy. And I was just like, yeah, I guess just fascinated by what was going on to the degree where, I don't know, you get some conviction about the technology. I don't know. But there was, at no point, because I don't also like, I do not want the responsibility of telling somebody to do something that doesn't work out. And
especially, it goes both ways. I mean, you've actually said this in the previous podcast. It's like, listen, if you're taking credit on the way up, you're gonna have to take all the blame on the way down, right? So, again, people, the name of the show is not investment advice. No, I'm quasi joking that we dropped the alpha, but it is like, it's objectively hilarious.
No, we did, and but the truth is, I'm saying, I will say, I've learned one thing from the last 2 years is how to deal with FOMO, especially in a financial market where we were on this crazy bull run. Everywhere you look, people are like just making hand over fist, like hundreds of thousands, like life-changing amounts of money. And some of those people are our listeners, right? Like I've got messages from people who said, I bought X number of Bored Apes and I bought a house. I bought Jack's checks like recently and like made a crazy thing. And
hold on, like I just want to say this, Bilal, before you finish talking, because you nailed it. You know how many people have messaged me asking me if I got in early on checks? I'm like, what do you mean get in early? It's an open mint or open edition. Yeah. Like anybody could have bought anything for $8. And I got literally zero. I bought 0 checks.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Like, I don't think, I think that's the other thing about a lot of this stuff is all of these themes of something being organic or not. It's like, if it's not organic, like you cannot expect sustained growth, right? Without there's probably some sophisticated biological metaphor in there, but it's like it's not a self-sustaining, self-propelling thing. And there's plenty of that going on, especially in NFTs. It's just like all this like coordination, you know nothing about. I don't know. We also just like mirrored the market so ridiculously. Like we were all like into it, writing about it, making stuff, and there was like a 3-month period where we were just like, guys, we need to go and get jobs and become plumbers or something. Like we were like really, we really mapped to the market big time on like.
I still feel like that now. What are you talking about? You don't see these layoffs
going
Jack,
on, bro? But we didn't do open editions that are top of OpenSea, buddy. Like you're talking to a different group here.
I'm saying we leveled out. I'm not saying we're back. I'm saying we leveled back out to like consensus on, we need to be making stuff, getting our heads down. We can't just be, winging our savings into cartoon toads and doing what,
Well, actually, let's address Faraz's question because he asked, I'm going to say this, and this dovetails on what Jack just mentioned. And for Jack has the famous "This is pointless" graph. If anybody's seen it, I'm sure a lot of listeners have. But the only advice that I don't think we've touched on about, was it Faraz? He said, should I start a podcast or what is the advice? I'll actually say something that our friend David Senra from the Founders podcast recently told me a couple of weeks ago. So a little inside baseball for the listeners, like, again, once a month, I'll probably shoot some idea. I don't know, we'll brainstorm. I'll be, guys, we should do, I think I asked you guys, we should do a daily podcast, like once a quarter. And then this time I kind of floated it and like Bilal, this is how Bilal bats down my like insane request. He just goes, let's talk about it after the podcast on Tuesday, knowing that I'll forget about it.
No, not even forget. Just more like, no, I mean, I think it's actually quite interesting to share like how this stuff, we've talked about doing this. I would love to do something like that. But just to be completely straight up, like just to produce this once a week, like the amount of time and energy, it's already like takes up quite a lot of time it's not always 100% perfect. It takes so to do it every day, we would have to basically hire more people and which is not a crazy thing to do, but for us to all commit to that would probably not.
Well, you know what? Let's throw this out here. Would I don't know if you're listening, feel free to DM or message, but would a daily 10 to 15 minute, just that dose of the stupidity, would that stupid dose be something you'd want every day? So just think about that. But let me answer Faraz's larger question, and I'll say this to David Senra. So I messaged David and I go, hey, think about doing a daily, because I know that you did a Founders Daily. Well, he started a daily, which is only 1 or 2 minutes. So David's podcast, incredible. Founders, we had him on a couple of episodes ago, and he just goes, this is my advice, so I'm just going to parrot him. He goes, do you think you can do something like this for 10 years? That was it. That's all he asked.
Yeah, that's a great question.
And I'm like, wow, freaking podcast Socrates over here. And I'm just like,
that episode as well. Good. That's the best place to send people.
Yeah, send that. Yeah. Well, actually, yes, exactly. Listen to that. So that's a great capsule of his thinking. And I was just like, that is such a great question to ask, right? Even if it's not exactly 10 years. So I would present that as my answer to Faraz. Like, whatever you're deciding, whatever format you think you'll do, is this something that you could potentially do for 10 years? And the reason, I mean, really, it's quite simple. And David just, he drilled it home. He's like, listen, all the payoffs are towards the end, right? Like everything, we know, like we talk and joke about compounding, but he's just like, listen, if you're not going to do it for that long, like, well, you're not going to get the payoff. That's the entire point. So I would offer that as the advice. And not to say that we'll do this for 10 years. I mean, I think we can. And we just don't really talk about it, but we've put ourselves into a situation where, yes, we can do this for 10 years because it's low lift, right? And we enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and my thing to answer your question for us on top tip, we've covered like 5 or 6 of these already. So just summary from the top of my head is like the most important is knowing why you're doing it and staying true to that. When you inevitably are like, oh, I need to grow, I need to do X, Y, Z, I need to bring on guests and try this different format. Like you have to keep bringing yourself back to why am I doing this? And I'm optimizing my life around why I'm doing this. The second one is commit to doing 10, 15 minimum, and just say, like, even if you just record them and don't release them yet, like just commit to doing that to get used to the reps of recording, and you'll see what you like, and it will evolve as you do more of those, obviously. And like I will say, make your sound quality, specific for an audio podcast, good enough from day one, which all that means is buying $50 mic. It's easy. I've got I can share it in the show notes, but I've got like a thing on Creator Lab with different options for microphones to use at different price points and stuff like that. And just make it super easy for yourself. And that's the most important part. And the last part is expectations. Like this audience size of podcast is way smaller in terms of number of listens or downloads compared to what you're used to seeing on social media of hundreds of thousands and millions of views for a 3-minute video. And like, just look at the averages. There's basically, like ours would be already in the top 1% based on our size. And that is not even that huge, right? Like it's a decent size for what we do. But that's another thing. Especially if you're used to doing something else and you're used to being like, oh, my thread got 300,000 views or 1 million views in a day, you have to put it in perspective of like, that is someone reading and scrolling through a thread on an open platform that you don't own. This is a platform where someone's listening to you for an hour. So the depth of engagement is just way higher. So that's just something, it comes back to like why you're doing it in the first place. So that's kind of my best tips as well. Anything else, boys, before we move on to a couple more things?
Solid. That was solid.
Yeah. Solid.
Trung, all right. Predictions for podcasts. This is an interesting one. Trung threw this in our group chat. Well, full transparency, Trung threw all 5 of these questions. So thanks to Trung on that one. So the question is, where do you think podcasting is going as a space? I'll throw it over to you guys. I've got some ideas too, but curious to hear yours first.
Actually, Bilal, I'd love to hear your thoughts more on the because the 2 things that we're going to discuss news-wise, I actually don't think we'll hit them. Like
but it's kind of related to this, yeah.
It's very related, right? We're going to talk about, there's a Semaphore article about Spotify, and they're having a lot of podcast difficulties. I'll actually break that down because I love Bilal's take on this. And the other part was we're going to talk about Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, 16th employee at at Google. She left YouTube after 10 years. Neil Mohan, shout out, another Indian CEO, although we just lost a female CEO in Silicon Valley. But you know what? It might be worth it just to explore this, because those two companies are probably, and Apple's just completely, they just don't care. Has anybody cared less about a category than Apple podcasts?
Yeah, it's true.
Like, they literally had the
and
first
what's annoying is they
where,
still have the monopoly power because they're still the biggest.
Yeah, it's crazy,
yeah,
right? So let me actually break down let me break down the Spotify situation, and then I'll let me throw it to Bilal, and then Jack's thoughts on Bilal's thoughts. So this is the article. It's very interesting, from Semaphore. We'll put it in the show notes. But so Dawn Ostroff was a former television producer, and then she became the head of content for Spotify. And as we've talked about, and a lot of us probably remember, over the past 2 years, Spotify has gone balls deep into podcasts, right? We might have to edit that word out. But so they spent $500 million on content, premium content. Joe Rogan, The Ringer, Alice Cooper from Call Her Daddy, Gimlet, and big contracts for the Obamas, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry, among others. There's even more. So they spent $500 million on content, and then they also spent about $500 million on the back end. Anchor, which does is Anchor for editing and producing?
I think they host as well.
Okay, yeah. Anchor does hosting, and then they did Megaphone, which is for ad placement. So actually, I have noticed with Spotify a lot more the algorithmic ad placements, or was it programmatic ads? And I know that because I'll be listening to Bill Simmons and I'll get an ad for a Canadian bank. I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. But basically, this was the takeaway from the article. So Spotify needs to go, what is going into podcasts, because their existing business structure, which last episode Dan Runcie from Trapital kind of discussed, is like, it's not a great business model for Spotify, the music one, because no matter how big that company gets, they don't get any benefits of scale from the songs, because they have to pay 60-70% in royalties no matter what, right? So like between 1 million subscribers to 20 million, however many people are streaming and listening, they don't get any benefits on the margins. However, podcasts, which if you do own it, you get much better margin structure. And if you can create this a programmatic advertising, it's much more beneficial, because if you look at the pure numbers, and this kind of addresses the question about where is podcast headed, podcasts are about $1 billion a year in advertisements. It's tiny, but terrestrial radio still does 10 plus billion. And people have been saying, oh, podcasts will replace radio, but people are underestimating like how much of middle America just listens to radio while they're driving, right? It's not podcasts. So that's all of a roundabout way of saying Dawn Ostroff's, she had to resign in January. Her approach of basically like getting an Obama or getting a Prince Harry, like paying big dollars and kind of like microwaving like these big hits, it just hasn't worked. It's everything we've talked about. Podcasting is the last thing you can microwave overnight.
Right. Inorganic. Yeah.
I mean, the All In was a rarity because it is huge and it happened very quickly, very atypical.
But I think the powerful thing about that is it's like, you know that these guys know each other and spend time together, and this is like putting a camera and a microphone on a conversation they'd already be having versus like, what is the agenda that we're going to drip out over these 12 episodes, and how do we, there's like this line between, there's a spectrum between like totally organic shooting the shit, and then there's like hyper produced serial amazing like storytelling, and then there's a middle ground which is just no man's land, which is like partially scripted conversations and like,
or like get like an Obama or Prince Harry and like put guests on their show, right? There's probably not the chemistry you're looking for. Like Obama and Bruce Springsteen had a podcast. I haven't listened to a single episode. Like I deeply respect and have followed both of those careers. It's just that idea never resonated or appealed to me.
Yeah. It feels forced, and it's like the format feels beneath a lot of these people too. Let's be honest. Like the podcast is like, it feels like it's more of a punk format. Joe Rogan's the biggest podcaster in the world. Like it's got the ground up vibe to it, and like the coming from above that medium and not like making a name on it, just like sort of doing it as another format of a distribution that it just doesn't feel the same.
I 100% agree, and I'll just add to that to say, I love the way you just said like top down versus bottom up. I also think what makes podcasts very unique and why they've like kicked off so much in the last few years is because they've looked at traditional media and it's something completely different. Like the best ones, in my opinion, are way different to, especially interview podcasts. Joe Rogan's was the best because it's literally him being curious for 3 hours with all sorts of people. He doesn't have the constraints of a TV boring radio interview where they're like, we're going to be on for 20 minutes. Here's the PR points. And I get this even for my podcast. The publicist will send me a bunch of questions and I'm like, oh, this is great, I might use too, and then I'll like make my own ones up. And the difference between that and what Joe Rogan does, and then let's say any TV interview just feels like complete waste of time most of the time.
The scoop on that too, right? Like you're in the green room.
Yeah, in the green CNBC, and they're telling you this is your position.
I haven't been back since we cut that video, buddy. Since Smart Nonsense cut that video. Crickets. I think I got buried after that one. For the listeners don't know, there's during a podcast, our podcast, maybe episode 20, I was talking about how when you get put on CNBC, they email you and they're like, hey, listen, you have to pick a side and send us your arguments in advance. Which I get it. You want good TV and people should have a thought, but it's also insane. Because I don't have an actual opinion about these things. So like I was asked, should Apple buy
so funny.
Should Apple buy a film studio? I had zero opinion, boys. So I Googled it. I saw an article from other reporters like buy Lionsgate Film. So I just copied that, put it in my brain, and now thought it was my own idea. And now, if anybody asks me what Apple should do, I'm like, yeah, buy Lionsgate. And if you disagree, with me, like I will go to the woodshed with you. This guy says it's a good idea. Yeah. So
I wrote 10,000 words on it, so it must be true. Yeah.
But Bilal's 100% correct on Bilal. So like, could you actually pull that thread a bit more? And it actually speaks to how YouTube has become actually the whale in the podcast space. Unexpected. I know that YouTube has a podcast unit now. But I mean, those short clips where Rogan came up, actually, a lot of his popularity came from these short clips on YouTube. I mean, YouTube is, if you're talking about the future of podcasts, I mean, YouTube is honestly for the discoverability angle. I discover a shit ton of podcasts on YouTube just from like the small clips.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, like thoughts on YouTube for the future of podcasts and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think, just to comment on the Spotify thing really quickly, I think it was smart for them to just signal to the market, we care about this, we're going to invest in this. But if you look at a deal by deal basis, I think they underestimated how much that would actually drive in terms of downloads and like listening essentially. So even like Joe Rogan's podcast, I know the numbers are still crazy, but just again, N of one with me, like I used to listen to pretty much every Joe Rogan podcast when it would come out, like at least 75%. And I've listened to maybe less than 5% since it's went on Spotify, just because it's like there's more friction. I think the experience for listening to podcasts on Spotify is not the best personally, but I'm like a power user. So, but I just know, like to me, a dedicated podcast, like where you go and you press a button and that's where you listen to podcasts, is just really important to me. Is how I also feel about YouTube. So like, even if you look as someone who as we create podcasts, if you just see the retention on audio platforms like an Apple or Spotify versus, let's say, YouTube, the attention span on YouTube is still less most of the time. And not just for me, like for everyone. And so, because again, it comes back to that format. Like when you're creating an actual video, like people can have background play, but like less than 5% of people use background play because they have premium. Because that's the only premium feature.
That's a legit. I pay for premium. That's right.
Yeah, me too. And that's why it's a good experience, right? But if they gave everyone background play and had a dedicated podcast tab, I think it would be like a massive increase personally, because then there's no reason to not use YouTube. And
I've never understood that. I've never understood why background play is not
I think they make way more money off premium.
It's a carrot for them to get people to pay. So that's why they don't do it.
But I thought you might be able to tier it like background play with ads versus background play without ads?
Yeah, that might be.
I mean, I'm sure they've had that conversation. They're smart people working there, but like...
Yeah, they are smart, but I'm just being honest. I think the way their team's doing it, like I've spoken to them quite a lot about this, like very smart people, but it's quite disjointed. It's not just YouTube, it's everyone at Google, right? It's a big company. There's different competing OKRs within different teams. Like, you know, it's basically your targets for the quarter or the year. And I just think just to get something over the line just takes so much effort. And like, I would question if their priorities are actually in line with what should be happening. And again, just me being 100% honest here, my boy who listens to this show, he's probably listening to it right now, is the podcast guy there. So I'm not like being disrespectful. I've said it to him in person as well. Like, he was not like the #1 podcast listener in the world, right? Like, he worked primarily on YouTube, saw an opportunity. He's doing, I'm sure, a decent job there. But it's not like they're like, oh, we're all power users of podcasts. Let's make the best experience for
fair
podcast
enough,
listeners.
though, it's the same reason that Apple, I mean, this the pie. I mean, the prize is just not that big relative to everything
that's
else,
true.
right?
And
that's a reality.
That's a fair point. Exactly.
My gut on that is like, that's got to keep people on the platform. Like, those are some of the longest videos on YouTube, right? The hour and 2 hour long, conversations. Like, even Rogan, like, what that would do for royalties and creator earnings for people that are publishing on YouTube, if people could listen in 95% more situations, you're gonna kick more revenue to the people producing the long form content, and then that flywheel spins. It just seems like only for like mega power users would it prompt you to upgrade, but I think it would change a massive macro behavior if they just rolled it into the free version of the YouTube app. Because I think even on like an Android or something, it's probably not the case, right? It's an iOS. It's a limitation of iOS, maybe, or I don't know.
No, I think that's one of the main features of YouTube Premium. Because if you go on their landing page, it's literally like the first or second one. I think it's download video, a background play,
and no ads, probably.
And no ads. Yeah. Those are the three main selling points.
I think they go on.
No, go. It's gonna be a distraction. Go.
I was just gonna say, I remember for a short period of time they introduced background play without the paid. It was like a tiny window before they added it to premium. And I remember being like, wow, this is like a game changer for anyone. Like, I'm in the gym listening to grind sets for an hour. Like, I can't do that without the background play. I don't want a TrueView ad in the middle of like people going mad. And you know what I mean? Like, so I'm sure, you know, that part, I trust them in terms of like, they run the numbers to say what percentage of our audience can we get to be paying users? What are the 3 most important, you know, value propositions? They know ads, background play, and download are actually, that's why I pay for it. So I completely get it. But I think specifically for podcasting, that is like, you're not going to, if you're having the frame of how do I create the best podcast app, that frame says you need background plays and non-negotiable. That is all of podcasting. 2, video, you already have that, right? No one else has that apart from Spotify. And most of their content isn't video. It's just like, you know, a few people have that. And then the 3rd is like, let people download it for offline. They're on the plane or whatever. So that makes a lot of sense for podcasts, but it comes back to my point. There's competing ideologies within YouTube, I'm sure. Someone who's driving the podcast agenda says, yeah, let's do this. Let's do RSS feeds, which is another thing they're trying to do. And then someone else is actually, we have to focus our energy on these other things. So I think to answer your question, Trung, how do I think it will keep evolving? I think for YouTube specifically, they're going to keep growing either way in this category just because they're YouTube, because they're the #1 video site, and just looking at a macro level of population of the world that has internet access and video bandwidth, they're already just going to keep growing. And secondly, if you look at the number of people that listen to podcasts, it's still, you know, it's way more than it was 5 years ago, but it's still, I think maybe 50% of the population doesn't listen regularly, maybe more. So I think there's another element there as well. So I think naturally they'll keep growing, and then every year they'll pull out a stat to be like, oh, we're the biggest podcasting platform because of some random, you know, metric they've pulled. And so that'll keep those people in their jobs moving forward. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it's enough to actually take over Apple's share and Spotify share. It would just be a natural growth they're already getting, and they'll make a few tweaks to it. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but that's my opinion on it.
You know who's a dark horse, actually? I think based on, I mean, you talk about discoverability, right? I mean, that's the YouTube edge. And they don't have to change anything, really, to your point. Like, within, they just YouTube. The discoverability recommendation engine is always going to be there. They don't really have to change much, but I think because of what Twitter's revenue is, and Twitter, people have spoken about this, is where most podcast recommendations probably get shared, if we're being honest, right? Like between individuals outside of like group chats. And they, I think, have a chance to really, it's obviously complicated, but they already have Spaces. So they figured out the audio side. At least the live audio, but they actually, if you click on the Spaces button, it's looking early into what might become like a full suite of podcast tools.
Yeah, that would be sick.
But I think that would be, I mean, listen, for discovery, that would be huge.
I agree. They have an opportunity there. The only thing I'd say is if they do what a lot of those established companies do, which is, oh, we're going to add this on, and it's going to be like, oh, now you can listen to podcasts, but it's not all of them, you know, whatever else it is. That's like, you really need to do this properly. And that means giving people what they're already used to, which is a dedicated space to listen to their stuff and make sure all of them are there. And that's actually not that hard to do. I know there's like exclusive ones on Spotify, but basically anything that you can RSS subscribe to on a regular podcast app like Overcast or whatever, you can bring that all to any other platform.
All the content's real. Like, it's all available, right?
So anyway, yeah, I think there's definitely, and to answer the question actually from my side, the other things I think that are going to evolve is just maturity. I would put it in this bucket of just maturing, because one, is the numbers going up, but two, if you're used to any other form of media, like, you know, we're in 2023, man, and I'm still reading out a Shopify ad, you know, like for 30 seconds, doing it 12 times to get it right. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, when I started the pod in 2015, I recorded ads then, and I was like, I can't believe I'm recording ads. And now, however many years later, it's the same. And so that is something where, like you mentioned, Spotify, there's our audio host Acast actually has a pretty decent like dynamic option where you can press a button and say, here's a 1 minute ad slot, dynamically insert an audio ad. That should be happening way more as a percentage of the pie. But it's quite a hard problem because you need to be doing that at the host level, because Spotify is only going to play ads on 20% of my downloads. So I'm not going to like really care that much to like focus my efforts on it. So I think just moving to a world where there's dynamic ads, there's programmatic ads, like what you talked about earlier, seems obvious. And like all the analytics and production stuff, I think will just keep improving. I think it's still like feels very 2005 to me. Like the analytics I get for podcasts are like worse than Google Analytics like 10 years ago. Like it's super basic. So yeah, that's the few areas, like if you're building in that world, I think there's massive opportunity for growth there. So yeah, anything else, boys, before we wrap it up with a few listener questions?
I was going to say one thing we didn't cover, but you boys probably saw, was Zuck getting on the paid verification.
Oh, yeah. Saw that.
I thought you guys give that a nod. We'll come back to that next week, but talk about monetizing a platform that has network effects.
Yeah,
I mean, somebody ran the numbers on that. They're like, they think they can get 20 million users. So that's a lot, man. 300 million. That's a material. They can make money. That could be a billion plus business easily.
Yeah.
I mean, the scale of it. What is it? 10 times bigger than Twitter? Maybe bigger than that.
Yeah. Is it 2 billion people? Or I don't even know.
I think it's bigger now. Yeah. Crazy. Anyway, continue.
All right. Cool. I think this one's gonna be a short one. Would we do it again? That was Trunk's question. Just a quick fire answer to that one, boys? Would you do this all again? I think I know the answer.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
I'd capitalize more on the alpha, though.
That's true. Let me say. Yeah, we'd be retired if that was the case. Jesus Christ. All right, and here's a few listener questions. I thought these were actually quite good. Thanks for sharing these in the Telegram group chat, everyone. Colfax asked, it's quite a cool question. What is something in your life that when looking back, you wish you would have committed to doing 100 times, like the podcast? Or something you'd like to do 100 times in the future? I like that. Anything coming to mind for you guys?
You know what? I this is something that I know I will do in the future. I need a sauna machine, man. Nothing makes me happier than getting a sauna live.
So
I know
good.
Jack owns a house. Jack, get a sauna on the property, bro. I'll be there every single day.
Have you got a sauna, Jack?
No.
I'm saying get one on the property.
Right.
With an ice plunge outside, just go full Huberman Lab.
No, but let's say maybe 10 years. What did I wish I'd done? I wish I tweeted earlier. That I'll say that. Yeah, 100%. I wish I'd been more consistent on putting stuff on public. I went through waves. I did it a lot in college, stopped for a decade. And that act, and we talked about it, it's corny, but like just that act of getting in the flow. What Bilal said for like, record 10 things, don't even have to release it. Just, you need to get those reps in. It's corny AF. But
but it's true. 100%.
Yeah, so I'd say that for content. And I don't want to get stuck in the content. Well, maybe I'll bucket in two things: content and fitness, or like some type of like daily activity on the fitness.
Here's a curveball. What about we don't always talk about family life, but I'm just curious, since we're on a reflecting mood, it's just post Valentine's Day. How would you apply that idea, something you'd want to do 100 times, essentially, in relationships or family? Just curious, from two dads.
Oh, wow, Zaidi.
You know what? I'm going to do
There we go.
Friend of the podcast, Jim O'Shaughnessy. He's got a great practice that I have yet to adopt, but he wrote letters to his kids when they were,
oh, man.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's incredible.
Just an incredible. And like, I think that to your partner, to your kids, to people in your life you care about, can look back at the evolution of your relationship. I think it's the same idea of like writing down what you think. Yeah, we all do that because we want to get a business off the ground, or you want to get people to like respond to your ideas on the internet. But those same ideas, like expressing yourself to the people that you care about, is a very strong habit to make too.
I'm going to piggyback.
I could get a lot better at it. I'll be completely frank. I'm much better at Twitter than I am at writing letters to my family, which is a sad thing to admit, but it's true.
I'm in the same bucket. That really resonates, because there was a period where actually I was doing that. I was writing handwritten letters to people that really mattered to me, and completely stopped doing that, like 10, 15 years. And no, that's amazing.
We got to get back on it. Hopefully anyone listening can let us know.
That's a great one.
Start the habit with us.
That's a great one, dude. That's a great one.
Right, I sent this in the group chat, but after Trung mentioned Tupac last week, I was on a Tupac train for the week, man. And the classic song, Letter to My Unborn Child. Oh, man. That is on the same theme. I mean, he's an absolute killer, man. I forgot how good he was. All right. I'm glad I asked that one. Okay, I think that was there anything else for you guys on the 100 times?
The next 100. Oh, yeah. No, sorry. Nothing 100 times for me.
All right. More. I would say I didn't really answer it. I think we've kind of touched it on like the recap shows. I would say the writing one for me is interesting, because I've been writing for a long, long time since I was a kid. I did like the Arsenal blog every day for like 100, I probably did 500 blog posts at one point. And and that was amazing. But it was literally, I'd go to my computer, it was like Blogger or whatever back in the day, and I would just write directly in there. It was terrible, but it was just like, putting out my thoughts, and it was like really great. And then I'd say like now I do write quite often just for myself, like normal notes and stuff. For Creator Lab, I did it like when I was going pretty hard in the pandemic. I started writing on Twitter for like 2-3 months, and I saw a lot of benefit, and it was great, and it was really nice to get it out. But basically, once we started the show, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I basically haven't been tweeting for a long time.
I saw some banger threads you had back in the day, dude.
There were a few which were great, and I really like writing. But I would say the reason I stopped doing it really was because I kind of optimized my whole life at that point around what are things I like doing. I want to spend more time, doing positive things, and that like the creative part was really being filled by doing a podcast. That's kind of what I like 100 times more than even writing. So for me, it was like, I'm doing this. You guys are already writing a bunch on Twitter. Let me just focus on making the audio good and concentrating on other parts of my life. at some point there will be a time where I feel like really sharing more there again, or like wherever that might be. And I haven't had that feeling as much, to be honest. So I think it has to be when you're really feeling it. But that would be something I wish I have been documenting a little bit more over the years. But yeah, that would be kind of my answer.
Well, I got one more, actually. Thanks for that one. So it sounds like we're actually all on the same page. We need all do more writing.
Yeah.
For different purposes. I do have one more that came up when you were mentioning the writing thing. Was basically the year before we had our kid. I tried Sam Harris's Waking Up app to actually get in a proper meditation cadence. And it's a very small commitment. It's 10 minutes a day. But I mean, listen, I've been completely off that train for the last 5 years, but going through that at least once, I think it was 150, 200 days in a row, I think 10 minutes a day, is like, just to know what that feels like. That was something I definitely would have done earlier.
Oh, that's class.
That's
yeah,
a great
like having the like, it sounds corny, but like actually watching your mind and having the whole mindfulness exercise.
Oh yeah.
Even if you
don't get toddlers doing that shit, man. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, it's like I wish I'd done that decades before, because even though I don't do it as a daily practice now, every now and then I'll just know that that's available, and it really does ground you. Just like, man, watching your brain at work, it's absolutely bizarre. Like,
yeah,
it just. This is the one thing I will say from Waking Up, which really resonated with me. This is the analogy that Sam Harris uses. And whatever you think about Sam Harris, I know that I'm a fan, and I know that people may not be as big fans, but I think if you look at his mindfulness stuff, it's very powerful. The thing that is interesting was he said, you can't control what you listen to, right? So if you're actually just standing on a street, whatever sounds are happening in the world, you do not get to pick and choose what you hear, right? It's like if a police car with a siren comes screeching down the road, you can't choose you can plug your ears after the fact, but you can't stop it from coming into your ears to begin with, right? But that's basically what happened with thoughts in your brain. It's like, if you just watch your brain, it goes wild. And it's like those sounds. You actually don't control, you can, but typically you don't, over the course of the day, control what is just kind of popping in and out. And the whole point that he's making is like, just as you'd stand on the street and become aware of what you're hearing, like you'll hear a bird chirp, you can't stop that from coming to your ear. It's like, that's literally what's happening with your thoughts. They're just popping in there. You just have to be aware of that and try not to let each individual thing just kind of take you in different directions. So that's
a great one, man. I would add, I like the app as well. I use it, and he's got like quite a soothing, calm voice. Yeah. It works quite well. If you don't like his one, there's also Headspace. I think it's Andy something. I forgot his surname, but I use that one a lot. Like back in the day, I haven't used it for a while, but that's a good one. And then Calm.com, they've got a good app too. So between those three, you're great. If you get background played on YouTube, there's a bunch of good ones on there as well for free. Just
go 1 hour white noise or 1 hour Sam Harris. That shit's free.
And then the other thing I'd say, you mentioned sauna. I would also say I do that in the sauna. It's actually a great, I think a lot of people think of meditation as, I need to get rid of my thoughts, and that's not actually really what it's about, right? Like you said, it's just about, this form of meditation anyway is about just being mindful, being aware of your thoughts, just becoming aware of what's around you and the sounds and basically being in the present moment. So I think the sauna is actually great if you don't want to spend twice the amount of time. Just do it. A sauna is a great place for me personally. I'll just go in there and I'll just be like, okay, I'm just gonna just chill and concentrate on my breathing for a little bit, and it's a perfect time to combine them as well. And then the other thing is, if you do if you go into the park, you're walking around, there's so many, it sounds kind of cheesy, but the bird chirping, just being aware of the branch moving, there's just if you do that more often, you become so much more aware of everything around you. And even stuff when you're eating, if you put normally I'm scoffing down my food, but every once in a while I remember to just be let me just take a little second here and put it down. And that is a little moment that you're oh, I'm actually eating this food. It's kind of amazing. So I think that's I think that's generally been.
Masher.
I know, bangers and mash with the gravy. But yeah, I think that's a great one, Trung. Thanks for sharing that one, Giza.
I had one more comment. I have a good sauna story. I was in Helsinki when we used to have a lot of public saunas. Yeah, no, this one's PG. So funny enough, Helsinki in Finland, they used to have a lot of public saunas, but they actually stopped doing that because everybody in Finland just has a sauna in their house now. So the public sauna business is kind of dying. So I visited in 2016, went to one of the last really big public saunas, and I just rolled in there and with my buddy, and it was hilarious because these old school, the guys that go there and they're there for 10 hours a day and they're mad wrinkly. They just saw these two young bucks roll and they're like, we're going to smoke these guys out. As soon as we roll in, water starts going on those coals. Just they're testing us. Didn't even last like 5 minutes. It's just hilarious that they knew these guys, thought that they could hang. But that's my sauna story.
They don't play around with the sauna there. 100%.
Oh yeah, not at all, man. All
right, boys. Let's wrap it up with this. Well, there's two questions. We can see if we've answered that one already. But this one's from Wayne. What standout thing have you each learned from each other, the other two, during your time on NIA? So we can just go around if there's anything that comes to mind. I guess we've answered something like this in the past, I think. I don't know if all three of us were here for that one, but thanks, Wayne, for sending that question.
I'm going to throw it out. We've talked about this in the past for sure, but Bilal's the only one that's done every 100 episodes. So we're just going to throw it out there. Yeah, you're the only one that's done it.
Yeah.
You are the glue.
Consistency.
Yeah, that's the true consistency there. So I'm going to shout that out. And for Jack watching, we'll focus on the NFT stuff in particular because it actually bookends the journey of this NIA 100 episodes in. Literally, the first episode was about he had minted an NFT that was very germane to that period, right? It was like when things started really popping off, that it had a successful mint. And then during the next 99 episodes, we went up and down. Like famously, we joke about Jack buying into Bored Apes early and then selling at the top. And then now, obviously, he has the top NFT in the freaking world, right? So watching your journey with the NFTs, and actually I'll be writing about this for my newsletter in the upcoming week. Jack knows this because I showed him a doc, but like watching and having just every week talking to you, but getting to see you implement literally your most famous visualized value graphic of the "this is pointless" chart, I find that pretty incredible.
Yeah, man. 100% agree.
Thank you, boys.
Jack, you got some, or do you want me to go?
I think absorbing some of the different skills and viewpoints. I think I've learned maybe just to look at everything from a slightly different angle based on the way, our conversations have 3 points of perspective most of the time. And that's not just professional. That's also like how you grew up, where you grew up, who you grew up around, where you've been, all that stuff. So I think no like specific thing, but more of an appreciation for like how you can, like everybody interprets the thing that we think is the same thing. We're all interpreting it slightly differently based on our experiences. And so that's been my, that's been what I've loved about doing this.
Yeah, that's a great one. I'll just say mine as well. For Jack, obviously similar to what Trung was saying, like it's been really cool just to see, I think going from Creator Lab, following your stuff from before that, but see those kind of principles actually be applied. I kind of mentioned this on the NFT episode a few weeks ago, but just not only has it been like, oh, there's this theory, but actually seeing you apply it is pretty cool to see, like especially close up. And specifically, as I'm not a dad and you two are, just seeing, first of all, honestly, both of you, the fact you're able to balance like your, normal family life. Like obviously a lot of parents do work, and so it's not like crazy, but specifically with Jack recently, you had your second kid, and that was the week I think you launched Checks. And like to see that that's even a possibility is kind of an amazing thing, right? Like just, I don't know, Trung, you might have been doing something similar.
Nothing focuses the mind, like looking at private school tuitions.
That's it, exactly. And just seeing that is actually kind of like a preview for me for the future, to be like, okay, there's no excuse, like whatever you need to do to get done, that might
I love that.
Like
That's
be
great.
A really cool one for me as well. And then the other thing is like the simplicity part. I think I've said that with Jack before. Just I think you've got a great way of summarizing ideas visually, but also through words. Like you often say less than me and Trung put together, but like you normally would have the most insight into something because you've thought about it, and you'll kind of say something when it needs to be said. So I think for someone like me, that's been like very helpful to see up front. And then for Trung, I mean, man, where do I start with Trung? But dude, I mean, just to see your output is like just an insane thing, right? Like the intensity as well as consistency. Like often you think of those two things in opposite ends of the spectrum, but like you do both like quite incredibly. So being able to see like what it takes really close up, seeing how much you put out, like that is really cool for me to see. Because again, I've spoken to many people who do that sort of stuff, but to see it firsthand and to see like even after this podcast, I'm going to be like, hey Trung, here's a title I've come up with in my head. Have you got one? And you'll just bang it out as well pretty quickly. And just, yeah, I think that's been really cool to see close up. And yeah, I think that's the two kind of things I've learned from you boys.
And the history, fun facts.
Oh, that's the one.
Mate, that's a crazy one. Your man's an encyclopedia.
Yeah. I would often call, when I describe the show to people and they don't know who you guys are, I'm like, oh, Jack does this. And then Trung, I'd say, oh, he's like a business encyclopedia. It's like if I ask him, not just business to be honest, but especially business. But I'll be like, oh, I'm going to ask him about Coinbase IPO. I'm going to talk about the other day when LVMH was formed. And you're like, I think it's the 1860s. It's like, it's kind of incredible what's going on in your brain there. So I love that one, mate.
Great question. Thank you for the
great question. Yeah, I think we can wrap it up with this last question, boys. This is from Chance. It said, for the next 100 episodes, what are you most looking forward to the next 100 episodes? Any changes or goals you have in mind for the pod? I think it's a good question to wrap it up for us.
I'm going to do the David Senra quote, and I'm not going to get it wrong, the exact verbiage of it, but it's like the next 100 episodes, we're going to say that after episode 101, after episode 200.
Oh, he goes, David Senra, Founders Podcast. Each episode, he looks literally at a founders like Steve Jobs or like the guy that founded Ferrari. And after the end of the episode, he goes 289 down or 250 or 160 to go. Yeah. And then he goes 1,000 more to go.
Yeah.
It's just like, great. It never ends. It's just always, you know what? I agree. I think it's easy. We're making this easier for ourselves to do. We're enjoying it. Again, we've done zero growth. People understand, like zero growth, zero monetization. Like we've talked about it maybe 1% of the time that we've ever chat. And nothing hardcore in terms of ideas. I mean, things we've floated. I think Twitter Spaces is probably the lowest hanging fruit because if Bilal here is kind of like the bellwether on it because he does handle a lot of the post-production and behind the scenes. So if Bilal thinks that it would be something that is easy and wouldn't affect the quality, I guess, because that's the main problem right now. Like you don't know what the sound quality will be on Twitter Spaces, 100%. But if that was the case, that was easy. I think I would imagine we'd be doing a lot more Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, I'm up for doing them. I agree. The only thing I'd say beyond the sound quality stuff, I'm like completely fine with. It sounds actually pretty good on iPhone even. I think for me, what's more important is like what's the format? Because I think doing what we do here works great like this. And if we're doing it in Spaces, is that really the right format for that? And again, it comes back to like what's unique about Spaces is people can listen live and they can engage, they can ask a question, they can come on. Now we did it once just as a test. And this is the second point, which is it still has to be fun and we have to enjoy doing it. Because if we're not, we're just going to be forcing it.
Oh, and so, I do remember that one time. It was like the questions weren't great.
Yeah, so I think if anything, we would want to like pre-vet some questions so we know that they're like worthwhile us discussing. Because sometimes, again, it's not everyone's fault. Some of those people who join probably didn't even listen to a podcast. So
they just wanted alpha from Jack.
They wanted alpha and they might have just asked the same question we've answered many times before. So I think having some way to like filter through questions beforehand, like maybe people can submit them on Twitter or in Telegram and then we can address some of those live and then bring people on and like make it interactive. I think that's interesting. But I know, Jack, you've probably done more Spaces than us. So is there formats you've said like, oh, that's a unique thing that should be on Spaces versus a podcast?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've seen be successful is, you do it around a single topic or a single question, so there's focus on it, versus like people doing a podcast episode on there, which I think would work, but you just have to close the stage and basically do a lot like a live podcast basically, versus like wild card. It's a very different skill set, like taking like a random person from the internet and like guiding a question or picking something that's going to add to the discussion, versus like we're going to talk about the decision Mark Zuckerberg made to make verification paid on Facebook. Then you're going to have like even if someone comes up and doesn't really have like the most insightful question or commentary, you can bring it back. Whereas we're just like, hey, not investment advice podcast, and it just spirals into complete.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great way. I think that could work actually. Just picking like, I think we were just talking about it there. Was it? We didn't get to talk about it this week, but the new NFT platform, was it?
The Royalty Wars, the Blur.
Royalty Wars, or like one taking over the other, or Trung wanted to talk about Susan Wojcicki leaving YouTube. Like that's perfect for something live in the moment is happening. Perfect. We're going to talk about it. Maybe someone will join to give their take.
You know what? It's also better for evergreen. Like to Jack. I mean, we're talking about Jack here, like Mr. Simplicity, Mr. Making the messaging. Like it would be way more. I mean, look at the ones that do really well, like guys like Founders, guys like Acquired. They're single topic, right? Like the ones that have these catalogs, and like these. That's what makes it that you can actually visit. Because man, if you're going back like through our things, it's like, what this guys talk about episode 64, right? Like just fucking nonsense, right? It's just like it's the whole thing about making something evergreen versus timely. But I mean, for us, this is clearly something that we want to do.
Yeah, I think
everything has to be evergreen.
That's a good. I mean, but I think that brings like this is a little inside baseball, but just from my side, I think like when we first started it was such an experiment. Like, oh, let's just see how it goes. And I will say, like, I think people describe what we do, and like we have a rough sense. But I'm curious to get you guys' take. Like, if you were summarizing what we do, like we used to say, edge of the internet. Like sometimes it's news, sometimes it's like AMA. Like, I think having more of a focus, it doesn't have to be like, oh, we're talking about crypto only. But I'm saying like a focus of like this is what you're coming for, and I feel like sometimes it has been a little bit all over the place. So. That's partly by design, but I'm curious, like, what you guys think about that. Because the question is, next 100 episodes, what we would essentially improve. So that's something for me. We've kind of talked about it several times before, but, like, what is the reason for someone to come to us?
That's a great question. I would say this. If we were okay to go that route, I think creating a catalog is an extremely powerful exercise, and it focuses these episodes. It might even make our jobs easier, right? It's like, we don't have to scramble now. It's like, here's the question. Everybody focus your attention, read about it for 30 minutes, come prepared. And that now the title for the episode, we know exactly what the title is. Like for example, if the title for this episode was Susan Wojcicki's 10-year run at YouTube, that is something that you can refer to that in 5 years, right? So yeah, I think it's definitely worth exploring, narrowing down the focus a bit.
Yeah. And I'm curious if you're listening to this, I'd love to get your take, because like in the comments, like let us know what you kind of come to NIA for, because like we've done like a little mini survey in the past that we've spoken to lots of people, but I think there's quite a range of like what people are coming for, and I think that'd be interesting to hear. Jack, go for it, mate.
I was just gonna say like there's probably some like macro media thing here where a podcast could basically be an album. So it's like if you're tight enough with the segments, you basically have the ability to watch all 6 or 7 tracks, and then you have like basically the timestamps will get cut into different sections.
Segments,
so it's like
basically,
the Twitter Spaces thing would be one segment of the podcast isolated into a title, a prompt for people to discuss. But just in general, that feels like the direction, right? It's either the Joe Rogan like 4-hour rambling conversation that doesn't really have any delineated sections, or the like, here's this specific thing we're discussing, here's the next specific thing we're discussing.
That's interesting.
I don't know if our podcast would ever go in that direction. We definitely, I think we kind of move from one extreme to the other, right? Some are like rambling, and others are like, let's move on, this is the thing. That's more on the news side.
Yeah.
But yeah, I much prefer the like loose couple talking points defined, and then like sort of wandering around seeing what we come up with.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it comes back to that idea of like, is this audio, are we basically optimizing for one, what we like doing? If that's the case, we're probably already fine doing whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
If we're changing that, we're saying, actually, we want to make it more focused. Maybe that approach is like something to explore. But I think we've had this kind of like confusion a little bit between YouTube and audio. Like majority of people listen on audio, right? And it's because anything that's an hour long, you're generally not sitting there just watching our mugs on Zoom, right? So it's like a different
Or you're
thing.
going to look at Lex and Balaji for 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously there are people that like video and some people prefer that. But most of the time, what makes podcasts, again, unique is you can do background play. You can be at the gym or you can be walking your dog. So I think majority of people still like that. And I think our format has been audio first. It's like we're making it for a long form thing. You press a button for an hour and you get to hang with us. And YouTube, we have up there, but nothing's optimized for YouTube. Like it's not
zero.
Yeah, and like the
except
clips,
for Jack's thumbnails.
Yeah, exactly. But even that, like, yeah, that would make more sense for the 20-minute segment, 15-minute. Like that would actually be perfect for YouTube. But I think right now, from what I hear, like from people, is they like pressing a button and listening to us for an hour. And so again, it comes back to, are you optimizing for like just growth? Then yeah, maybe the shorter ones make more sense. But if it's, maybe that will be overthinking it as well. So yeah, I'll be curious to hear people's opinion on that, if they have a preference for any of those two things. Some other people might say, actually, I'd rather listen to 20 minutes the part I'm interested in and then skip the other one because I don't care about NFTs that week and they want to get on to the next thing. And then,
I guess they don't want alpha. Okay,
yeah,
exactly. You don't want
yeah.
alpha. Okay.
So the last thing I'll say on my side, and just being, completely honest here, is like I think we've done an amazing job. 100 episodes, like we've really like made it fun, smashed it. We've got some amazing guests. Like we had like Sailor within 70 episodes or whatever it was, or maybe a little bit more.
We also have amazing listeners. So I just want to add, we have amazing listeners too. Yeah,
a massive thing.
Like we hear from a lot.
Many.
All of us do. Independently.
So many of them are like hilarious. That's one of the things that I noticed moving from, Creator Lab, or even like, I think Visualize Value Community has a lot of funny people too, and a lot of them are here. But there's a thing about like we're all here bringing us together as jokes. And I think that has attracted a certain fun group of people. So I'll just put this out there of like things I wish we would have maybe got to doing in the last 100 episodes, and maybe more forward looking, is we've talked about more content, doing lives, doing spaces, doing more of a community, right? Like we've talked about a Discord, merch. We've talked about it would be fun to have like something like that just for people, mainly for jokes. And then on the guest side, I think we've actually got a pretty good format with guests. Like, I think it's actually quite a unique thing having three of us talk to them when it's fun, but like really swinging for the fences and getting those big guests. I think like we've had Michael Saylor, we've had Tetranode, but just to be completely blunt here, I got massive names of people being a complete unknown person. And I think between the three of us, we could swing for the fences a bit more. And I think that we like just DMing people with the amount of followers you guys have, you can pretty much get almost anyone you want.
Good shout.
Yeah. And that just comes down to like a focus of like, we're going to go do this month. And these are the people we want to go get. And that's not just on YouTube, but I'm just saying it makes it a lot easier, right? Like to have that. So
yeah. And I think we could go outside of the typical, the typical set. Yeah. The bubble guest situation.
That's
where
true.
Like, yeah. Like I'd love an Andrew Schultz, for example. Would be
oh my God. Yeah. That would be incredible.
Like outside of the technology Twitter bubble, I think we probably should and can think about getting people on. Are we just like stoked to talk to?
That would be the frame. I would say to you guys as well, and I'll do the same. We can say it in our group chat, and this is again like completely inside baseball. I'm just sharing this on the pod because I think it's interesting. It's like, who are the people you're like, oh my God, it would be so cool to speak to that person, because that's who we should go get. And because the episode's going to come out better and it's worth our time. This is not to say all the people we've had on aren't that. Like a lot of those people are, but I think just like we've talked about, like Balaji. Like Balaji is someone we've referenced forever. Andrew Schultz, I've mentioned him every other week. I know you love his podcast too. Theo Von. I mean, like these are people that are not out of reach for sure.
We should get some comedians on it for sure.
Oh, that would be sick. Can you imagine getting
I always thought a great podcast would be a business podcast where the comedian's being told what happens in the world of business.
Oh, that's a great. That's amazing.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's the next 100 episode. We got to unlock a few of those.
We got to try that at least a few episodes. That would be great.
You know what? There, answered it. It's like, what are you next? I think once a month we should get like a top tier comedian. We just lob them. Fucking business stories.
Theo Von talking about Susan Wojcicki's reign at YouTube,
or Apple's app transparency tracker.
This would be great. This would be great.
This is it, boys. That's
but we're onto something
right there. I love that shit.
Let us know what you think about that. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, we did mention last episode we'll be doing the spaces on Wednesday. We're not doing that for reasons we'll be able to share in the future. But just a heads up for anyone that didn't see the Telegram message, that unfortunately won't be happening this week. But we'll try it again soon, as you can hear. But yeah, let's say for the next month we need to lock in a big comedian. Let's go Theo Von, Andrew Schultz level.
Present it. We should be like we should just literally throw out there. We want comedians opining on the biggest news in business.
Strong. If you tweet it and like ask people to vote for people, that could be a shout.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Tron, you got the humor part. And then I know, and I'm not trying to name drop, but I know there's been some top tier comedians you've spoken to as well.
And I've referenced you, Tron.
Referenced you. I'm going to say it. Hassan Minhaj, my brown brother, we got to get him. I mean, that would be, and the cool thing with him is he's actually into this world. Like, I know he's done stuff on My First Million, and
I think a lot of them are, right?
They are. I mean, Andrew Schultz 100%.
If
you think, if you think how much he's done online, this would be a perfect. I mean, he's been on Pump's show and done stuff with Pump. Like, there's so much overlap. Like, I'm sure we can get some of these guys. So yeah, let us know who you'd like us to get in the comments, because that would be something I would be excited to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get a Theo Von, we all fly into Nashville to stay at Jack's house.
Theo Von, we're coming down to Nashville, man. Right, they'll just sit. Okay.
I think you could get to Theo Von for sure. He'll be at Soho House, Nashville, man.
I think he lives down the road.
Yeah, like Walmart.
Just knock on his door, mate. Rick Burton style. Here we go. All right, boys, I think we're hitting the time. So I think we can wrap it up here. Any last thoughts before we close it out?
Dude, that was amazing. No, it's perfect, man.
That was great. Thanks for everyone listening.
Great
100 episodes. I'm sure we got a few people that caught every episode of the 100 too, which is just phenomenal.
If you did, let us know. That would be cool to know. All right, boys. Yeah, been a pleasure. 100 episodes. Here's to 1,000 more. David Senra reference.
100 down, 1,000 to go.